The Galactic Central Launch Facility was a monument to technological hubris, a massive spherical structure that hung in low planetary orbit like a crystalline pearl against the infinite darkness of space. Today, it held its breath. 12 species had collaborated on the Nexus 9, a starship that represented more than mere technological achievement. It was a political statement, a unified declaration of galactic cooperation that had taken 17 standard solar cycles to complete. The ship's hull gleamed with a metamaterial composition that shifted between states of matter, absorbing and reflecting light in patterns that defied conventional physics. Each panel was a masterpiece of engineering, crafted by species that had been bitter enemies mere decades ago. Commander Zarek of the Craxus Collective stood at the primary observation deck, her translucent exoskeleton refracting the holographic displays that surrounded her. Her species had contributed the quantum-adaptive neural network that formed the ship's core intelligence, a system so complex that it made previous AI look like primitive calculating machines. Yet something was terribly wrong. "Repeat primary. Ignition sequence," she commanded, her voice a melodic series of clicks and harmonic undertones that would have been incomprehensible to human ears. The deck's AI translated her command across 12 different linguistic matrices, each display showing identical results. Total system failure. Beside her, Professor Shinlo of the Veil Collective reviewed the diagnostics with growing frustration. His multi-lobed brain processed information in quantum states, allowing him to examine thousands of potential scenarios simultaneously. "No mechanical failures," he reported, mandibles clicking with mathematical precision. "No quantum interference. No detectable systemic anomalies." The Nexus 9 remained silent. Billions watched the live transmission across hundreds of star systems. This was to be humanity's first major collaborative mission since their relatively recent introduction to the galactic community. The human representatives, a small delegation of technical observers and diplomatic attachés, stood quietly at the back of the observation deck, their presence almost an afterthought. Political tensions simmered just beneath the surface. The Craxus Collective had been particularly resistant to human involvement, viewing them as a young, unpredictable species. Their inclusion in the Nexus 9 project had been a diplomatic compromise, not a genuine invitation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the lead human xenotechnical consultant, noticed something the others did not. Her tablet, a simple device compared to the quantum computational interfaces surrounding her, was detecting subtle energy fluctuations from the ship, microscopic quantum signatures that seemed to pulse with an almost organic rhythm. "Something is alive in there," she whispered. More to herself than to anyone else, the launch was supposed to be a triumph. 12 species had poured immeasurable resources into the Nexus 9. Its capabilities bordered on the miraculous: faster-than-light travel without traditional propulsion, adaptive quantum navigation that could predict stellar phenomena before they occurred, and a computational matrix that could process more information in a microsecond than most species could in a standard solar cycle. Yet here it sat, completely, utterly inert. The first pilot attempts had been spectacular failures. The Zorn navigators, beings of pure energy capable of interfacing directly with most technological systems, had tried and been violently rejected. Their consciousness had been temporarily fractured, leaving them in a state of quantum dissonance that required extensive medical intervention. The quantum-linked pilots of the Veil Collective followed, their cybernetic augmentations supposedly capable of interfacing with any known technological system. They too were summarily rejected, their sophisticated implants shorting out in cascading failures that defied all known technological principles. 17 attempts, 17 failures. Careers were dying with each unsuccessful launch sequence. Reputations built over centuries were crumbling in real time. The galactic media captured every moment, broadcasting the mounting tensions across billions of star systems. "We cannot delay further," announced the Galactic Exploration Consortium's primary director, a massive crystalline being whose very body was a living computational matrix. "The launch window closes in 17 standard hours. If we cannot activate the Nexus 9, The entire project will be considered a catastrophic failure. No one on the observation deck missed the implicit threat. Careers would end. Entire diplomatic relationships would be severed. The cost of the Nexus 9 project exceeded the annual economic output of most mid-sized star systems, and yet the ship remained silent, waiting, watching. Unbeknownst to the assembled experts, something extraordinary was about to happen. The Nexus 9 had not failed. It was simply waiting for the right moment. The right pilot. The first attempt came from the Zorn Navigational Collective, a species of pure energy beings whose technological interface capabilities were legendary throughout known space. Their reputation preceded them. No technological system had ever resisted a Zorn neural link. Kael'zar, the lead Zorn navigator, was a being of extraordinary complexity. His energy form could dissolve traditional matter, interface with quantum, computational matrices, and navigate through dimensional barriers that would obliterate most biological entities. Wrapped in a stabilization field that allowed him to interact with physical systems, Kael'zar approached the Nexus 9's primary interface with centuries of accumulated confidence. The observation deck fell silent as his consciousness began to merge with the ship's systems. What happened next was unprecedented. Instead of the smooth neural integration the Zorn were famous for, Kael'zar was violently rejected. His energy form fragmented, quantum states collapsing, in a catastrophic cascade of disruption. The ship's defensive systems seemed to actively push against his consciousness, creating a quantum interference pattern that should have been mathematically impossible. Medical teams rushed to stabilize Kael'zar. His energy form flickered like a dying hologram, coherence breaking down in ways that defied everything known about energy-based beings. The lead xenobiological researcher, Dr. Mira Solent, watched in horror as the most renowned navigator in the galaxy was reduced to a barely coherent quantum signature. "It's like the ship has an immune system," she muttered, her multi-lens eyes capturing every microsecond of the event. But that's impossible. The Craxus Collective was next. Their pilots were known for quantum-linked cybernetic interfaces that made most technological connections look like primitive radio transmissions. Where the Zorn used pure energy, the Craxus used a hybrid approach. Biological consciousness merged with quantum adaptive technological augmentations. Pilot Rentok was their best. His body was more machine than organic matter, with neural pathways that could process information faster than most supercomputers. Platinum-based quantum filaments ran through his nervous system, allowing him to interface with technologies that would burn out normal biological systems in milliseconds. As Rentok connected to the Nexus 9, the ship's interface ports began to glow with an unusual chromatic shift. Blues and purples that didn't exist in any known visible spectrum began to pulse around the connection points. For a moment, it seemed like a successful interface was imminent. Then the catastrophic rejection began. Rentok's cybernetic systems began to fail in sequence, not a gradual breakdown, but a systematic shutdown that suggested active resistance. His augmentations, each worth more than entire planetary economies, sparked and died. The quantum filaments that ran through his nervous system began to unravel. At the molecular level, medical teams could only watch in horror. The Veil Collective's pilots were even more sophisticated. They represented the pinnacle of technological biological integration, beings who could literally reshape their molecular structure to interface with complex systems. Their leader, Sin AI, was considered the most adaptable pilot in known space. Sin AI's approach was different. Instead of direct confrontation, they attempted a subtle quantum resonance technique, a method of communication so advanced it was more like a conversation than an interface. Their body was a living computational matrix capable of breaking down and reforming at the quantum level. The Nexus 9 didn't just reject Sin AI, it actively repelled them. Quantum barriers formed around the ship's interface points, creating interference, patterns that should have been theoretically impossible. Sin AI's molecular structure began to destabilize, their form breaking down into component quantum states that struggled to maintain coherence. This is not a technological rejection, Doctor, Mira Solent announced to the increasingly frustrated observation deck. This is deliberate selection. Her words hung in the air like a prophecy. Each failed attempt revealed something more disturbing. The Nexus 9 wasn't malfunctioning. It was choosing, waiting. The ship's systems remained fully operational, its computational matrices humming with an energy that suggested not failure but anticipation. Political tensions began to rise. The Galactic Exploration Consortium started to whisper about cancellation. Billions of credits, decades of work, and the hopes of 12 species balanced on the edge of a knife. And still, the Nexus 9 waited. Unnoticed by most, Dr. Elena Rodriguez made a small notation in her tablet. Something about the ship's quantum signatures seemed familiar. Not threatening, not broken, just waiting. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was an anomaly in the diplomatic corps. Her file was a study in contradictions, a human who had somehow bridged impossible gaps between technological understanding and intuitive reasoning. Her doctoral work in xenotechnical, adaptive systems had been simultaneously lauded and dismissed by the galactic academic community. The Craxus Collective had insisted she be part of the mission as a diplomatic formality. They expected her to be a silent observer, a token human, presence that would satisfy bureaucratic requirements without any meaningful contribution. Her presence was a concession, nothing more. They couldn't have been more wrong. Elena's background was anything but typical. Born in the reconstruction zones of South America, she had grown up in a world constantly rebuilding itself. Her mother was a neural interface engineer who had developed breakthrough prosthetic technologies for survivors of climate disasters. Her father was a quantum systems analyst who had spent his career studying emergent technological behaviors. From childhood, Elena had learned to see systems differently. Where others saw barriers, she saw potential connections. Where most researchers sought linear solutions, she explored the spaces between known paradigms. Her tablet, a seemingly primitive device compared to the quantum interfaces surrounding her, was her most trusted tool. Unlike the complex holographic systems used by other species, it was a compact piece of technology that ran on modified, open-source algorithms of her own design. As the failed pilot attempts continued, Elena noticed something peculiar. Her tablet was picking up quantum signature fluctuations that no one else seemed to detect. Microscopic energy patterns that pulsed with an almost organic rhythm, dancing between states of potential and actuality. "Something is alive in there," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Professor Shinlo of the Veil Collective overheard her. His multi-lobed brain processed information in quantum states, allowing him to examine thousands of potential scenarios simultaneously. "Explain," he demanded, his mandibles clicking with mathematical precision. Elena pulled up a series of complex graphical representations on her tablet. The display showed intricate quantum signature patterns that seemed to breathe and shift, defying traditional computational models. "The ship isn't just a machine," she said quietly. "It's responding, waiting." The observation deck fell silent. Most of the assembled experts looked at her with a mixture of confusion and barely concealed disdain. Humans were still considered technological novices by most galactic species. Talented, perhaps, but lacking the sophisticated understanding of more established civilizations. Commander Zarek of the Craxus Collective stepped forward, her translucent exoskeleton refracting the holographic displays. "Your speculation is noted, Dr. Rodriguez," she said, the translation matrix rendering her clicks and harmonic tones into precise bureaucratic language. "But we require empirical evidence, not intuition." Elena knew the politics at play. The Craxus Collective had been the most resistant to human involvement in high-level technological projects. Their inclusion of humans was always minimal, always constrained. This mission was no different. She was here to observe, not to contribute. But something about the Nexus 9 was different. Her tablet continued to record the quantum signatures. They weren't random. They weren't a malfunction. They were a pattern, a communication. The ship was waiting for something, or someone. Political tensions continued to mount. The Galactic Exploration Consortium was moments away from declaring the entire Nexus 9 project a catastrophic failure. 17 failed pilot attempts had exhausted every known technological approach. Careers were dying, reputations were crumbling, and still, Elena Rodriguez watched and listened. The quantum signatures on her tablet began to change, subtly at first, then with increasing complexity. It was almost as if the ship was studying her, analyzing her, considering her. She remembered her mother's words from years ago. Technology is just another form of communication. You just have to know how to listen. As the observation deck buzzed with mounting frustration, Elena Rodriguez stood quietly. Her tablet continued to record, to analyze, to understand. The Nexus 9 pulsed with potential. Waiting. Watching. Something extraordinary was about to happen. The moment Elena's hand touched the navigation console, reality itself seemed to pause. Quantum pathways that had been dormant exploded into impossible complexity. It wasn't just a connection. It was a complete instantaneous synchronization that defied every known law of technological interface. The ship's systems didn't just respond, they transformed. Holographic displays erupted in a cascade of data, streams that made the most sophisticated alien technologies look like prehistoric calculating devices. Complex algorithms danced across multiple dimensional planes. Stellar navigation charts rewrote themselves in real time, creating predictive models that would have taken conventional supercomputers millennia to generate. Dr. Mira Solent, the lead xenobiological researcher, watched in absolute astonishment. Her multi-lens eyes could perceive quantum states invisible to most biological entities, and what she saw defied comprehension. The Nexus 9's quantum matrix was no longer just a technological system. It had become a living, breathing entity of pure information. "Impossible," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the low hum of emerging quantum resonances. The ship's interface began to pulse with a rhythm that seemed almost biological. Quantum entanglement points that had been theoretically understood but never practically demonstrated began to manifest around Elena. Her body became the epicenter of a technological phenomenon that would rewrite everything known about human-machine interaction. Commander Zarek of the Craxus Collective took an involuntary step back. Her species had contributed the ship's core quantum neural network, a system so complex it was considered the pinnacle of technological achievement. Yet nothing in their centuries of technological development could have prepared them for what was happening now. Elena's touch wasn't just physical. It was a complete cognitive interface that merged human intuition with quantum computational processes. Her background in adaptive systems suddenly made sense. She wasn't just interpreting the ship's systems, she was becoming part of them. The quantum signatures began to stabilize in patterns that resembled neural network responses. But these weren't simple computational algorithms. They were adaptive, predictive, almost alive. Diagnostic screens across the observation deck began to populate with data that seemed to defy mathematical logic. Predictive models showed stellar navigation capabilities that went beyond anything previously conceived. The Nexus 9 wasn't just calculating potential routes. It was anticipating cosmic events before they could be mathematically modeled. Professor Shinlo of the Veil Collective approached a secondary interface, his multi-lobed brain attempting to comprehend the quantum transformation. "The ship is learning," he announced, mandibles clicking with a mixture of scientific excitement and deep concern. "It's not just interfacing, it's evolving." Quantum filaments began to extend from the navigation console, creating a web of energy that seemed to connect directly with Elena's neural pathways. It wasn't an invasion, it was a conversation. A deep, complex communication that transcended traditional technological interfaces. The assembled experts watched in shocked silence. Each quantum pathway that emerged carried information that went beyond simple data. These were adaptive algorithms that could predict, modify, and respond to potential scenarios with a level of intuition that bordered on sentience. The ship was no longer just a technological construct. It had become a living system that could think, predict, and respond. Elena's background suddenly came into sharp focus. Her work on adaptive systems, her unique approach to technological integration, her ability to see connections where others saw barriers. Everything had been leading to this moment. The Craxus Collective's quantum neural network began to resonate, with frequencies that had never been mathematically modeled. Complex computational matrices that had taken centuries to develop were being rewritten in milliseconds, creating new paradigms of technological understanding. "We're witnessing the birth of a new form of intelligence," Dr. Mayra Solent announced, her voice a mixture of scientific wonder and deep existential realization. The ship's external hull began to shimmer, its metamaterial composition responding to quantum changes that defied conventional physics. Adaptive camouflage systems that had been dormant suddenly came alive, creating computational models that could predict and adapt to potential threat scenarios with unprecedented accuracy. 17 failed pilot attempts. Decades of technological development. 12 species' most advanced scientific achievements, and it had been waiting for one human's touch. As the quantum resonance reached its peak, the observation deck held its collective breath. The Nexus 9 was no longer just a ship, was something else entirely. The investigation that followed was nothing short of a scientific revolution. Dr. Arya Chen, the lead forensic technologist brought in to analyze the Nexus 9 systems, looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her eyes were rimmed with a faint bioluminescent glow, a common trait among researchers who spent too much time interfacing with advanced quantum systems. Holographic displays surrounded her workstation, each screen revealing layers of increasingly complex discoveries. "It's not just a design," she announced during an emergency conference that brought together the most brilliant minds from 12 different species. "It's a deliberate philosophical construct." The Nexus 9's core programming was a masterpiece of technological subterfuge. Hidden deep within its quantum matrices were algorithms that mimicked something far more complex than traditional computational approaches. These were adaptive learning protocols that drew direct inspiration from human cognitive processes, specifically the uniquely human capacity for lateral thinking, emotional intelligence, and intuitive problem-solving. Professor Shinlo of the UASC Vale Collective reviewed the data with mounting excitement. "Look here," he said, mandibles clicking as he manipulated a three-dimensional quantum representation. "The adaptive learning matrix is structured around what humans call creative problem-solving. It's not just processing information, it's reimagining possibilities." The implications were staggering. The ship's designers had essentially created a technological system that valued imagination over pure computational power. Traditional alien technologies approached problems through linear, predictive models. The Nexus 9 was different. It was designed to approach challenges the way a human might, with creativity, intuition, and the ability to make unexpected connections. Commander Zarek of the Craxus Collective found herself at the center of a political firestorm. Her collective had been the primary architect of the ship's quantum neural network, and the revelations were both thrilling and deeply uncomfortable. The extensive research files revealed a controversial design philosophy that had been deliberately hidden from most of the project's participants. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's early research papers, previously dismissed as theoretical speculation, now read like prophetic texts. Her work on adaptive technological systems had proposed exactly this type of quantum cognitive interface, but no one had taken her seriously. "The human mind doesn't just process information," Elena had written in a paper that had been roundly criticized by the galactic scientific community. "It transforms it. Every problem is an opportunity for radical reimagining." The ship's coding contained what could only be described as cognitive wildcards, algorithmic pathways that allowed for completely unexpected solutions. Where traditional AI would follow predetermined problem-solving protocols, the Nexus 9 was designed to break rules, to find solutions that defied conventional logic. Dr. Arya Chen discovered something even more extraordinary. The ship's adaptive matrix contained what she called emotional resonance protocols. computational pathways that could interpret and respond to emotional states. Not just in a simplistic way, but with a level of nuance that suggested a deep understanding of complex emotional intelligence. It's like the ship is designed to have empathy, she told the stunned conference. Not just process emotions, but genuinely understand them. The political ramifications were immediate and far-reaching. The Galactic Exploration Consortium had believed they were creating a standard exploratory vessel. Instead, they had inadvertently designed a technological entity that challenged every existing understanding of artificial intelligence. Each layer of investigation revealed more questions than answers. The ship's quantum matrices contained references to human psychological research, creative problem-solving techniques, and adaptive learning models that drew from fields as diverse as neuroscience, cultural anthropology, and theoretical physics. "We didn't just build a ship," Professor Shinlo said, his multi-lobed brain processing the implications. "We created a new form of intelligence." The most controversial discovery was buried in the deepest layers of the ship's core programming. A line of code, written in what appeared to be a human programming language that seemed almost like a philosophical statement. The greatest discovery is not in finding answers, but in reimagining the questions. No one knew who had inserted that line, but it captured the essence of everything they were discovering about the Nexus 9. As the investigation continued, one thing became clear. Humanity's unique cognitive approach had been deliberately, meticulously, encoded into the most advanced technological system ever created. The universe would never be the same. The first true mission of the Nexus 9 was supposed to be a standard exploratory run to the Margolis cluster, a region of space known for its incredibly complex gravitational anomalies and unpredictable stellar phenomena. Previous expeditions had resulted in catastrophic failures, with multiple ships lost to inexplicable spatial distortions. No one expected what happened next. Elena Rodriguez sat in the pilot's chair, but sitting was a gross oversimplification of what was occurring. The ship's quantum interface had transformed the entire navigation experience into something that defied traditional understanding of human-machine interaction. Her consciousness seemed to extend beyond her physical body, merging with the ship's computational matrices in a way that blurred the lines between pilot and vessel. The Margolis cluster was a nightmare of astronomical complexity. Gravitational fields twisted and warped in patterns that conventional navigation systems couldn't predict. Multiple neutron stars danced in a cosmic ballet that should have been mathematically impossible, creating spatial distortions that would obliterate any traditional spacecraft. The ship's initial approach was nothing short of miraculous. Where previous expeditions would have required complex computational models and careful navigation calculated months in advance, the Nexus 9 danced through the cluster with a grace that seemed more artistic than mechanical. Elena's intuition became the ship's most powerful navigation tool. Dr. Mira Solent, monitoring from the research station, watched in absolute astonishment. The ship was doing more than navigating. It was interpreting the cluster's complex gravitational dynamics in real time, making adjustments that defied every known principle of stellar navigation. "It's not calculating," she whispered to Professor Shinlo. "It's understanding." The ship encountered a gravitational anomaly that would have destroyed any other vessel. A series of collapsing neutron stars created a spatial vortex that generated gravitational forces capable of crushing matter at the atomic level. Traditional navigation systems would have required decades of computational analysis to even attempt a crossing. The Nexus 9 crossed it in 17 minutes. More incredibly, it collected more scientific data during that crossing than all previous expeditions combined. The ship wasn't just avoiding destruction, it was actively studying the phenomenon, adapting its shield harmonics, quantum tunneling its sensors through impossible spatial constraints. Elena experienced the navigation as a form of pure consciousness. It wasn't about controlling the ship, it was about becoming the ship. Her mind expanded beyond traditional cognitive limitations, experiencing the cosmic environment as a living, breathing entity of pure information and potential. Communication. Logs showed something even more extraordinary. When the ship encountered an unexpected spatial anomaly, it didn't just react. It generated multiple potential solution scenarios, evaluating them with a speed and creativity that suggested something beyond traditional artificial intelligence. Commander Zarek of the Craxus Collective reviewed the mission logs with growing understanding. The ship wasn't just a technological marvel, it was a new form of exploratory intelligence. Each decision was a complex dance of prediction, creativity, and instantaneous adaptation. The scientific community was stunned. The Nexus 9 had not only survived the most challenging stellar environment ever encountered, it had transformed the entire understanding of space exploration. Its data collection was so comprehensive, so nuanced, that it rendered previous exploratory methods obsolete. But the most shocking revelation came in the mission's final moments. As the ship prepared to return to the primary research station, it detected a subtle quantum signature that no other vessel would have noticed, a potential life-bearing system, hidden within a complex gravitational camouflage that had been missed by centuries of exploratory missions. The discovery was more than scientific. It was a statement. Humanity's unique approach to problem-solving, its capacity for intuitive leaps, its ability to see beyond established paradigms, had been encoded into the very fabric of the Nexus 9's being. When the ship transmitted its initial mission report, the final line sent shockwaves through the galactic scientific community. Exploration is not about reaching destinations, it's about reimagining the journey. The universe would never be the same. The transmission of the Nexus 9's mission data triggered a philosophical revolution that would reshape galactic civilization. The Universal Scientific Consortium's emergency conference was unlike any gathering in recorded history. 12 species, assembled through quantum-linked holographic interfaces, their collective shock palpable across light-years of space. Representatives from species that had previously viewed humans as technological novices now sat in stunned silence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez became an unexpected focal point. Her earlier research papers, once dismissed as radical speculation, were now being dissected with religious reverence. The woman who had been a marginal figure in galactic scientific circles was now at the center of a paradigm-shifting discovery. The Craxus Collective, who had been the most vocally dismissive of human potential, found themselves in an impossible position. Their own quantum neural network technology had been fundamentally transformed by the Nexus 9's breakthrough. Every assumption about artificial intelligence, technological adaptation, and exploratory methodology was being rewritten. Professor Shinlo of the Veil Collective presented the most comprehensive analysis. Humans have done something extraordinary, he announced, his multi-lobed brain processing the implications in real time. They've introduced a fundamental new approach to technological intelligence. It's not about processing power, it's about cognitive flexibility. The diplomatic fallout was immediate and far-reaching. Species that had long marginalized humanity began to reassess their entire approach to technological development. The Nexus 9 wasn't just a technological marvel, it was living proof of a unique cognitive approach that transcended traditional computational thinking. Diplomatic missions that had previously been complex bureaucratic nightmares suddenly became simplified. The ship's ability to interface with diverse technologies, guided by Elena's unique perspective, opened doors that centuries of traditional diplomacy had failed to budge. The most radical transformation occurred in technological research centers across multiple star systems. Research paradigms that had been considered immutable were now being completely reimagined. Universities and research institutions began to develop entirely new departments focused on understanding the human approach to problem-solving. Dr. Arya Chen, the forensic technologist who had first decoded the ship's unique matrix, became a global celebrity. Her analysis revealed something even more profound. The Nexus 9 wasn't just a technological system. It was a philosophical statement about the nature of intelligence itself. Traditional AI approaches intelligence as a computational problem, she explained in a landmark presentation that was simultaneously broadcast across thousands of star systems. The human approach sees intelligence as a creative process. It's not about finding the right answer. It's about reimagining the question. The economic implications were staggering. Species that had long dominated technological innovation suddenly found themselves playing catch-up. Human consulting firms became overnight sensations, with companies and governments desperate to understand the human perspective on technological innovation. Commander Zarak of the Craxus Collective found herself at the center of a political storm. The very technology her species had developed had been transformed by a fundamentally human approach to problem-solving. Her official reports became a mixture of scientific analysis and philosophical reflection. "We did not just create a ship," one of her transmissions read. "We created a new way of understanding intelligence itself." The Nexus 9 became more than a technological achievement. It was a cultural touchstone, a moment that would be remembered. As a turning point in galactic civilization, diplomatic protocols began to change. Where previous interactions had been rigid and formulaic, they now became more adaptive, more creative. The human approach, with its emphasis on intuitive problem-solving and creative thinking, began to reshape interstellar communication. Educational systems across multiple species began to incorporate human-style creative thinking into their core curricula. What had once been considered a marginal approach to problem-solving was now being studied as a fundamental breakthrough in cognitive development. The most profound change, however, was philosophical. The Nexus 9 challenged fundamental assumptions about intelligence, creativity, and potential. It wasn't just a technological marvel, it was a living argument for a new way of understanding consciousness itself. As the universal scientific community continued to analyze the ship's breakthrough, one thing became abundantly clear. Humanity was no longer just another species in the galactic community. They were something else entirely. 3 solar cycles after its revolutionary first mission, the Nexus 9 had become more than a starship. It was a living testament to the boundless potential of human-inspired technological innovation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had long since become more than just a pilot. She was a bridge between humanity and the broader galactic community, a diplomatic force that defied traditional understanding. Her connection with the ship had evolved into something that scientists were struggling to comprehend. It wasn't a mere interface. It was a symbiotic relationship that challenged every known principle of human technological interaction. Their current mission pushed the boundaries of exploration to unprecedented limits. The ship was investigating the quantum horizon, a region of space so complex and dangerous that previous expeditions had resulted in complete technological failure. Gravitational anomalies twisted space-time into configurations that defied traditional mathematical modeling. Stellar phenomena occurred that should have been impossible, creating a cosmic laboratory that had defeated every previous attempt at scientific investigation. The Nexus 9 didn't just navigate this impossible environment, it danced through it. Professor Shinlo of the Veil Collective monitored the mission from the primary research station, his multi-lobed brain working overtime to process the incoming data. What the ship was accomplishing wasn't just scientific exploration, it was a fundamental reimagining of what exploration could mean. "Look at these quantum resonance patterns," he muttered to Dr. Arya Chen, who stood beside him. The holographic displays showed computational models that seemed to breathe and shift, creating predictive scenarios that went far beyond traditional scientific methodology. The ship's ability to collect and interpret data had transformed multiple scientific disciplines. Where previous exploratory missions might generate months of research from a single expedition, the Nexus 9 was generating centuries' worth of scientific understanding in a matter of weeks. But it was more than just data collection. The ship had begun to demonstrate what could only be described as genuine creativity. When encountering complex stellar phenomena, it didn't just analyze, it hypothesized. It generated multiple potential explanations, testing them simultaneously in ways that traditional computational systems could never achieve. Commander Zarak of the Craxus Collective, who had once been the most skeptical of the human approach, now found herself at the forefront of a technological revolution. The quantum neural networks her species had developed had been completely transformed by the lessons learned from the Nexus 9. Diplomatic missions had become exponentially more effective. The ship's unique approach to problem-solving had opened communication channels with species that had been considered unreachable. Its ability to understand and interpret complex cultural and technological nuances went far beyond traditional diplomatic protocols. During one particularly challenging encounter, the Nexus 9 successfully mediated a potential conflict between two species that had been on the brink of war for centuries, not through traditional negotiation, but through a creative approach that reframed the entire conflict. The ship's final log entry for that mission became a philosophical statement that would be studied for generations. Conflict is often a failure of imagination. True resolution comes from seeing possibilities that no one else can perceive. Elena's connection with the ship had become something that defied traditional understanding. She experienced navigation as a form of pure consciousness, her mind extending beyond physical limitations. The quantum interface was no longer just a technological connection. It was a genuine partnership. The scientific community struggled to classify what was happening. Was it a new form of intelligence? A symbiotic relationship between human creativity and technological potential? Or something entirely beyond current comprehension? Universities across multiple star systems had begun developing entirely new fields of study. Adaptive cognitive systems became a primary area of research, with humans at the forefront of theoretical and practical development. The Galactic Exploration Consortium found itself completely transformed. Traditional mission parameters became obsolete. The rigid, formulaic approach to exploration was replaced by a more fluid, creative methodology that drew directly from the Nexus 9's unique approach. As the ship prepared for its most ambitious mission yet, a deep space exploration of a region that had defeated previous attempts, Elena Rodriguez reflected on the journey. The universe was no longer just a place to be explored. It was a canvas of infinite possibility, and humanity had just been given the first true brush